Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another retro RPG. The end of another week, the end of another poll. We've got a winner with the Darklands sourcebook for Lone Wolf. Now, as usual, we'll cover this on desktop in a wee second, and I'll be back at the end of the video with some other channel-related stuff and some other poll-related stuff. But before I do that, I'd like to take a moment to talk about my Patreons, who are wonderful, wonderful people who make all of this possible. So I'd like to thank them from the absolute bottom of my heart. Their efforts are so much appreciated. Now, if you'd like to join them and help support the channel, and I sure wish you would, or you'd like to see these videos a week early, or you'd like to see some Patreon exclusive videos we put up over there, then there's a Patreon in the description down below. If you check it out, it'd be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's have a look at the Darklands sourcebook. So, this is the Darklands sourcebook for the Lone Wolf Roleplaying Game. Came out from Mongoose Publishing 2004. And to fill in some background. So, the Lone Wolf Roleplaying Game is based on the Lone Wolf Gamebooks, which came out in the 80s and 90s. And these were different from most of the choose-your-own-adventure style gamebooks, because unlike Fighting Fantasy and other ones, these followed the exploits of a single character. So as you went on to each new book, your character basically gained a level, gained new abilities. You carried on equipment that you gained in previous adventures, especially one particular powerful magical item you could carry on right through from the second book. The first two books were about a quest to go and get a certain magical item, and you could carry that throughout the rest. And to me, it was an entry to role-playing. This was the first place I'd played a single character right through a storyline. And to this day, I still think of Lone Wolf as me, because I made those decisions. It's very difficult to hear about other people talking about what they did, because I'm like, no, I was Lone Wolf. I played that part in the story. Really set up role-playing for me. Now, in the world of Lone Wolf is a Kai warrior, a warrior monk who follows a particular god, who is opposed to the Darklords. And the Darklords come out of the Darklands, funnily enough. Now, the Darklands are usually an area of chaos where all the evil creatures fight against one another. But when one of the Darklords becomes powerful enough, he can control everybody else in the Darklands, and suddenly a wave of the evil creatures comes out and invades the world. And that's when the Kai warriors need to stand. And they have special magical items and all that, and that's what Lone Wolf is about. The first book, Flight from the Dark, and the following ones is as a Darklord leads his forces out of the Darklands and invades the more peaceful countries, and you are the last of the Kai warriors, and you have to turn this invasion around. And then there's the after effects of it, because the world is thrown into massive upset. Evil has come to dominance, especially with the Kai being gone. So, this is a very important sourcebook for the role-playing game, because the Darklands is where all evil stems from. While there's not going to be a lot of role-playing in the Darklands, this is where everything comes out of to cause upset across the world. So a very important sourcebook for the role-playing game. And the back cover. So, the Darklands. The most terrible country containing the vilest beings, a blasted scar on the face of Magnamund. The entire country, from ancient history to regional politics to specific geography, is presented within this tome. Though the Darklords and their minions are hidden, they are neither dead nor powerless. The second muster has learnt the lesson of the first, and swells to gigantic proportions while the world looks elsewhere. The obsidian city itself, Helgedad, is pictured and fully realised, with additional defensive notes and provinces described. This book definitively lists every single Darklord, including their statistics, weapons, description and image, combat style and personality. Their powers, their provinces, and their legions are all described in detail. There is no force of darkness in Magnamund greater than the Darklords, incarnations of evil, born of pure malice and hatred. They are the personifications of evil brought forth into the world by Na, the true Lord of Evil and the greatest of the Dark Gods. Na's evil begets newer evil of its own. From their unholy spawning vats, the Darklords unleash mutated creatures of vicious cruelty on Magnamund, a wide range of which are described inside these pages. Discover the awesome evil of the Igor, the Yorshur, the Zagash, and other beasts, as well as Gaiac subbreeds and rules for Liganim and Nadzrinim sorcerers. The Drakarim, terrible warriors from another world, brought to Magnamund by Na himself, served the Darklords as elite troops and formed the backbone of the greatest armed force in the world. Uncover the secrets of their organization, their mentality, including the rules for their most devastating of dark heroes, the Death Knight. Perhaps evil has already sunk its fangs into your soul, and you wish to take on the mantle of corrupt malice. Inside are 2 new character classes, the Dark Cultist and the Dark Warrior. Also introduced in the Darklands is a new concept of advanced classes, with 3 hideous paths of evil presented within. Arm yourself with a range of new weaponry, from the common Nalzeng to the unique Zejar Dulaga. Statistics are given before for the mighty weapons of the Darklords, including Nagazagda, Helshazag, and the Nyas Scepter. Dare you to enter the Darklands. And it's an OGL, so it's a D20 based, as much in the early 2000s was. The first edition was a D20 book, but they went on to being OGL based, the second edition onwards. So inside we've got an advert for some Mongoose Publishing things, Signs and Portents magazine. I used to know somebody who wrote for that. Been out of touch with them for a long time. Must reach out to them. We've got a table of contents. A large chunk of it's based around the capital city, Heljidad. The Eye of Evil. And Introduction to Evil. So, talking about the book itself and the history of it. We've got the geography of the Darklands. Now, this is something which slightly annoys me, because there's not really a map. There's a map later on, which we will deal with when we get to it, but there's not useful maps here. And in a guidebook about a country, I would have thought that would be one of the most important things. You know, if you're writing a guidebook about Australia, and you're talking about travelling from Sydney to Alice Springs, a map's going to show you what lies between, and what's going to happen, whether you're going across desert, through forests, across grasslands, whatever. And that doesn't really happen in this book. It tells you about different places, but it's not really helping a games master lay out journeys in the way a map would. So we've got a table here with knowledge in the Darklands. So if you make a skill check, what you will know about it. A knowledge skill Darklands. The domains of the Darklands, so going into the different provinces. Argatag, Barazoth, Djara, Dajdorza, Elgazar, all with lots of breakdowns of information and short histories. Thethmire, Galayak, Goriziga, Awadast, Kajzidad, should give up these, Lovad, Markag, Olotanak, the province of the Black Sands, the province of Ruins. See, I have now given up. My pronunciation's not good at the best of times. The province of the Damned. Then we've got dangers, so as you travel around, pitfalls of darkness, blighted winds, deadly terrain, wandering north, the touch of Na, the traits of the Darklands, so the ground around you is literally corrupting you. Slipping the noose, so reducing corruption. We've got the acts of corruption, what happens as you're affected. As I said, we're on to the largest section, Helgedad, the Eye of Evil, so the capital city, the Obsidian City, I believe they call it, where the Darklords reign from. So talking about Helgedad and the Kai, Vashna's Prophecy, Helgedad and Magnamund, and then the Dark City itself. So we've got the Unguarded Gate, the Black Doors, the Outer Courtyard, the Inner Courtyard, the Drakarim Ward, the Palace of War, Forge Ward, Cell Ward, North Gate. Just going through all these areas of it. The artwork's quite nice. Can't recognise many of these, so they're either done directly for it and they're lifted from some of the game books, because in the game books you do venture into the Darklands a couple of times. Fangire Tornoth, the West Gate. So laying out all of the city, the compounds of the Darklords themselves. So Gnarg's compound, Kragan Skull's compound, all the different areas where they've risen to power. Hakon, considered by many of the Darklords to be Zagana's closest rival for the title of Archlord. And then we're on to Darklands characters. So, we're talking about basic classes, advanced classes, the Dark Cultist, the class skills of the Dark Cultist. Different things you can choose, their different powers. All Dark Cultists gain additional statistic called Willpower at 8th level. Paths of Magic, the right-handed spells of the Pentad. So different spells you can get, because magic works very differently in a Lone Wolf to the standard in Dungeons & Dragons D20 systems. And we've got the Dark Warrior class as well. Some very, very nice artwork. All the class skills. Advanced skills, so, advanced classes. So we've got cult leaders there, death knights. Then we're going on to the Darklords. So we've got different traits they've all got. Different gifts. And then we're going to the individual ones, with all their breakdowns, their stats, how they appear, how they do things in combat. Darklord of the Silver Scepter, Darklord of the Grey Waste, who looks very lithe, like an assassin. The Darklord of Blood, the Darklord of Tyranny. Darklord of Serpents, who looks more like a shark man than a serpent man, but I can see what they're going for. Darklord of the Iron Helm, very much human, corrupted. The Bladed Seas, Darklord of the Black Bastion. The Silent Knife, Darklord of the Shadow Moon. Tortured Souls, Wicked Reaping. He looks very cool. I do like his lizard-like look, but with a thick fur coat. The Ebon Fist, the Chilling Eye, looking very alien indeed. The Raging Storm. Zog, the Darklord of the Lonely Road. Getting towards the end. Zagana, Archlord of Heljidad. Darklord of the Bitter Wind. And then we're on to tools. So these are magic items, which are unique to evil creatures. So, the Black Iron Bow, the Black Star, blowguns, the Overhammer, Sword Spear. We've got siege weapons, armor and shields, different types of adventuring gear. We've got magical items. Things so you can equip your followers of the Darklords to make them real challenge for players. We've got legendary items. Then we've got Creatures of Darkness. So going through the Gaiax and the Dracarim, who are the most common of the followers of the Darklords. I thought Dracarim were just evil humans. I didn't actually realise they'd come from another plane. Perhaps that came out in one of the later books. We've got the armies of the Darklords. And then we've got a bestiary. So, Antar Wasps, Bangroll. Not much illustration of the different creatures, but what's there is quite nice. Igor. We've got the different types of Gaiax, so desert Gaiax, forest Gaiax, ice Gaiax. Gaiax are basically the goblins or orcs of Magnamund. A Mind Reaper. Plark, Zargs, Vladoka. And then we've got a character sheet towards the end here. Obviously looking very familiar. Your standard stats, your standard skills for a 3rd edition D20 based game. The designer's notes. An index. And the open game license, which they had to print in all of them. And then we've got the only map. Now, as I said, this could have done with a map of the Darklands to let you know how everything's laid out. There's probably a map of the world in the main rulebook, but with all these provinces and areas that they go into, we could have done a map of the country to let you know what you're going to be going through, what terrain you're going to be travelling through. We have a lovely map of Helgedad here, and that all maps out Now, the different numbers map out to different locations, as given in the book. So that's fantastic. We've got the detailed version of the city. But why isn't there a map of the country? It just seems terribly lacking. Anyway, D&D players read this plan, D&D experts read this side. So, advert for Dragon and Dungeon magazine. And the back cover. Now, there's a lot of nice stuff in there. The stuff about the Darklords and the equipment and their followers really allow you to build up armies and come up with threats. You know, raiding bands come out of the Darklands and the players have to face off against them. And they've got the special equipment to challenge the players. That's great and useful stuff. While Heljidad is detailed out, I find they gloss over the rest of the country so briefly, and the fact there is no map, to make this book not really that useful for the Darklands. It would have been far better if they'd titled this The Darklords, and focused more on the Darklords themselves, fleshing them out a bit more, and all the rest of the stuff. I do find that this book is a little lacking in creating an area that the players can go into. But perhaps it's just for ideas. Perhaps these will flesh the imagination out of somebody, get you really your creative juices going, and you want to have an adventure in a particular part of the Darklands, and you can just make up the terrain and the encounters they go through on the way there. So your mileage may vary. I just find it a little lacking. So that was the Darklands sourcebook for Lone Wolf Roleplaying Game, and that won the poll this week on some 28% of the vote. Just narrowly ahead of the tied for second position, Sourcebook 2, The Mechanoids for Rifts, and the US Army Vehicle Guide for Twilight 2000, both which came on 27%. But this was a different poll, because I'm just back from my travels. I recorded those sections earlier in the week before I went travelling. I'm now recording these. But you made me tie for second position, and I'd said I was going to make 2 videos this week based on the top 2 in the poll. But by making the second one tied, instead of if the first position had been tied, I'd have just made those 2. I'm making 3 videos this week. So later in the week we'll have the Mechanoid sourcebook, and at the end of the week we'll have the US Army Vehicle Guide. And we'll look through those. Because I'm only just back, I haven't made a new poll yet, so I can't talk about that. But I can briefly say what else I've been up to. Well, I've been releasing espionage classes for 5th edition over on DriveThruRPG. And over on RPGgamer.org, I've been doing the Andor episode reviews and keeping going with the Legacy reviews. The period with Cade Skywalker, 100 years after the movies. If you're interested in those, go out and check them out. There'll be links down below. Thank you very much. But, as usual, I think I've been wittering on for quite long enough. So thank you very much for watching. And as always, most of all, you look after yourselves. And I'll catch you later. Bye now.